It appears this particular horse has lost a step, and that's a damn shame.
You're all fucking welcome.
The end of Season 3 of The Boys had set up plenty of intrigue moving forward. We saw Butcher and Homelander sort of unite in the end in order to save Ryan. We're always saving Orion. We also saw the vulnerabilities of Homelander highlighted in an epic battle between Soldier Boy, Huey, and Butcher. Combine that with the head-popping power of Victoria Newman, whose quest for power just so happens to align with Homelander's, and you had the makings of what I would consider some interesting plot threads to pull on for Season 4 of The Boys. What I was looking forward to the most was seeing how the relationship between Homelander, Ryan, and Butcher evolved, because there were a lot of complex dynamics that manifested in the finale of Season 3. Of course, Homelander and Butcher made that pact early on in Season 3 to sort of go scorched earth and have a showdown just between the two of them in the very end. When Butcher broke the rules and brought along Soldier Boy as assistants, Homelander pretty much called the deal off. But as Butcher and Homelander were both protecting Ryan at the end of Season 3, they kind of gave each other that look of, that was nice and all, but I still kind of hate you. They both represent very different father figures for Ryan, very different paths that he could go on in his young life. And I thought that that storyline was the most compelling storyline they could have developed in Season 4. And they did develop it, but their method of going about it seemed rushed to me. In my view, the writing got lazy at times in relation to these scenes in which Ryan and Homelander developed Ryan's darker side. There was one scene in particular where Ryan had pointed out that a producer of a film was treating one of the female assistants or production assistants pretty poorly. Now Ryan sees this and tells Homelander that he would like to do some good in the world. And Homelander naturally twists this into some dark thing and has Ryan basically torture the male producer. Now prior to this scene, I don't feel like any groundwork was laid to Ryan purposefully and authentically dipping into the realm of evil. He did push the stunt double or the actor that was working with him early on this season in that action film. He pushed him too hard, but that wasn't purposeful, I don't think. This scene was very purposeful where Ryan leans into his darker side, and it didn't feel to me like that was earned. We just sort of jumped into it. We also had the Sister Sage plot, which is the woman who Homelander enlists, who's got the biggest brain in the galaxy, smartest woman ever. I feel like I sound like Trump right now. She got a big brain, the biggest. You wouldn't even believe it. I know a lot of smart women. She's probably the smartest. She could put two and two together so fast, it's incredible. Anyway, I digress. Homelander enlists her to sort of pull the political strings behind the scenes throughout this season, sort of like Emperor Palpatine. And things go very well for her and Homelander for a long time. Until she gets shot in the head, of course. You know, that'll do it. After she's shot in the head, she goes back to like a third grade intelligence. She's not much help at the exact moment in time Homelander needs her to be the help. We then see Homelander dump her for an episode or two in favor of Firecracker, his new favorite source for breast milk. What an interesting character, that Homelander. I'm sure we've all had a breast milk phase in our 30s. But in the end, when it seems like all is lost for Homelander, his whole plan crumbles, Sister Sage comes back and says,
It's all part of the plan.
Those two examples right there of Ryan's character development and Sister Sage's supposed master plan in the end, those storylines were written a bit lazily for my taste. They needed more meat on the bone. They could have developed them further. I don't know if they would have needed more episodes to do that, but whatever the reason was, I don't feel like we got enough scenes developing those specific characters and their storylines. Another storyline this season that didn't quite resonate with me was that of Frenchie. That random 2 to 3 episode arc that he had where he has a male love interest. That was like out of nowhere. I mean, I don't feel like there was any groundwork laid for that at all in the first 3 seasons. And if I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments if you saw this coming. But in my mind, he and Kimiko, like, they were two of a kind together. And if anything, they might have evolved in some romantic way, but I just didn't see any evidence that this was some sort of natural progression for Frenchie to all of a sudden have like a gay phase for 2 to 3 episodes. Along with the storyline storylines that just didn't add up for me this season. It felt like the writers prioritized politics over plot. And don't get me wrong, I'm fully aware that The Boys is a satirical, political show that often makes fun of politics and predominantly people who are on the right of the political spectrum. And that's fine, have at it. I mean, I've enjoyed the satire and the comedy. I don't always think they do a great job of it. In fact, I think they strawman a lot of the political rhetoric in the show, especially that of the right. But this season, I think they just doubled down on it. I think a good example of this is the character of Firecracker. It seems to me that the writers utilized her mainly to represent and strawman the absurdity of right-wing politics. And in my view, the satire is very lopsided, and anybody who is portrayed as being on the left side of the political spectrum in this show, they're portrayed as much more reasonable. For example, Starlight. She clearly represents the more liberal, feminist side of the writers, and they portray her as a very formidable and honorable character. But I don't think season 4 balanced the political with the plot quite as well as the first 3 seasons did. There's a lot in this show that mirrors the current politics of our time, and they make that absolutely clear in season 4. I mean, Homelander is basically an exaggerated interpretation of how CNN or MSNBC would portray Trump. And maybe it's not even that exaggerated. Whether you agree with the writer's positions on politics or not, generally speaking, I think that when you make the politics of a show mirror exactly what is happening in real life, it comes across as more of a statement rather than an organic part of the story. And this would be true if the writers even had a more conservative point of view of things. And I think that's why a lot of Christian movies are not as well regarded. It's because they're pushing a message more than story. And when that happens, no matter if you're on the left or the right, I think it's bad overall for the plot, for the storytelling. I think a great example of politics done right in the movies would be Star Wars. There are a lot of political undertones in both the prequels and the original trilogy, and these undertones were inspired by the Vietnam War, the war in Iraq, US imperialism, how democracies slide from a democracy to a tyranny. It's a much more macro view of politics that George Lucas infused into the Star Wars series. But there were some good episodes in season 4. I did enjoy when Homelander gets to go back to the lab where they worked on him as a little boy and basically does Homelander things to the whole staff. That episode got back to the roots, I think, of what The Boys is as a series. And of course, the episode with the flying goats, I mean, that was just batshit crazy. That is classic The Boys. But beyond those episodes, I honestly did not feel like there was a ton of meat on the bone of this season. I hope season 5 has a lot more substance to it. At this point, I'm sticking around to see how the relationship between Homelander and Butcher and Ryan develops. Those 3 characters are the most compelling to me, and I hope they double down on that aspect of the story in season 5. I do also think A-Train's arc was interesting this season, and I do hope to see him align himself with the boys in season 5, and let's get some good superhero fights and showdowns. But ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you thought of season 4 of The Boys in the comments down below. I know there were some mixed opinions about this season across the board, but I'd love to hear what you thought. But please give this video a like if you got some value out of it, and as always, please subscribe to the channel if you'd like to hang out more with me in the future. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope to see you in the next video.